Hello, I'm IPostSwords, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a sword which, simply put, does not exist. That sword is the so-called scimitar. The word scimitar comes from Italy and France in the 1560s, and it describes this, the Shamshir. The original words, Cimeterre and Scimitarra, were describing this Persian sword. This sword design was in use for hundreds of years. And of course, they needed a word to describe it. And in itself, that's fine. Using the word scimitar to describe a shamshir back in the day was a way of describing something which did not exist in the native lands where the word was in use. The word scimitar has evolved from the 1560s, and these days serves to describe any curved sword that is foreign to Europe. For example, from the Middle East or Asia. This, therefore, is the originator of the term scimitar. But this sword probably isn't even what you picture when you hear the word scimitar, due to the stereotypes it has created. Instead, the word scimitar is probably more likely to provoke this sort of image in your mind. This is a Turkish Pala, which is in itself a subset of the kilij family. It features a broad and heavily curved blade, which widens towards the tip. And this is the rather prototypical image of a scimitar that people have. But it is of course not a scimitar because it is not a shamshir. And you may think I'm being pedantic, but this style of sword already has a name, the Pala. And in fact, the family already has a name, the kilij. They have unique names and identities. And the unique names and identities of these swords tie into their cultures and history. By calling this a scimitar, a word which is inherently inaccurate when applied to this sword, all it's doing is pandering to that propagandic idea of fear-mongering, that this is somehow the other, that this is something wrong and not European, it is a curved sword, as Skyrim would put it. In fact, that Skyrim meme, they have curved swords, is precisely what I'm talking about. This idea of something being shocking and other because it's curved, and it therefore is a scimitar. But no, this is a pala. But the problem with the word scimitar goes even deeper than that. Both of the swords I've just shown you are in fact from the Middle East, and they are curved blades. And that would make sense as being described as a scimitar. However, I've also heard these being described as scimitar. This is a yatagan, a Turkish design, and you'll notice that the edge is on the bottom. That means that it curves in the opposite direction to the pala that I showed before. And yet, both of them are somehow considered to be scimitars, despite being completely different in form and function, because they are both foreign curved swords. If this is a scimitar, this cannot be. That word cannot possibly describe both of these completely different designs. If it can describe them both, the word loses all meaning. In specificity, words gain meaning. If I tell you he used a scimitar in written text, you'll not be able to know whether it was this or this. That inherently means that the word scimitar is a useless word, and that scimitars don't exist. There is no prototypical scimitar as there might be a prototypical pala, or a prototypical yatagan, or a prototypical shamshir. This problem doesn't only extend to places like Persia and Ottoman Turkey. It in fact goes all the way to India, for example with this Tulwar. The Tulwar is the prototypical sword of India, and it has a distinctive disc-shaped pommel and a distinctive one-piece hilt assembly. The blades are moderately curved and range from being rather narrow to being very broad. In fact, a broad tulwar has its own name, and that is Tegha. A Tegha is literally just a tulwar with a broad blade, or by some definitions, a blade that widens towards the tip. I in fact have a Tegha, which you can see on screen now. Both of these swords, despite being very similar, have their own names. Neither of these are scimitars. They are Tegha and Tulwar. They have distinct identities. and scimitar is not an accurate descriptor for either of them for the reasons we've mentioned earlier. But it doesn't just stop in Turkey, Persia, and India. It goes further still. This is an Afghan Pulwar, which you might note is very similar in both name and form to the Tulwar. The Pulwar, however, has a half dome-shaped pommel, different to the disc-shaped pommel on the Tulwar. But it is in other ways similar. It has a similar curvature and breadth to the blade, and a similar hilt construction, although it does have downturned beast head quillons. This blade is therefore yet another curved blade that is not from Europe, which is also not a scimitar. Now, everything we've covered so far is just a fraction of the swords that are called a scimitar. It's also true of Arabian saif swords or Arabian sabres, or even things like the Ottoman Karabela, which are in every way identical to Polish Karabela, and yet you'd never call a Polish Karabela a scimitar, you'd call it a Polish sabre. And so this highlights the inherent, let's say, racist characteristic of the word scimitar. If an Ottoman Karabela is a scimitar and a Polish Karabela is a sabre, then that word scimitar, which can be used to describe an Ottoman Karabela, of course, is inherently only defining the fact that it's foreign, that it's not European. And I think that is inherently a little bit problematic. Not only is the term inaccurate, it also carries racist connotations, and we should probably stop using it, if not for the first reason, then for the combined first and second reasons. The word scimitar, therefore, is useless. Thank you for listening to this short and hopefully calm rant, because that's all I've got for you today. Until next time, stay sharp.